which we got. And we are live. Welcome everyone to another episode of QuaranCon Cube. That's our QuaranCon continuing content series. I like the word con apparently. Or those three letters. But look, QuaranCon Cubed on the fancy merch. This is a new QuaranCon hoodie for followers of the series. You may be all, what's up with this hoodie, Virginia? Because the other one has like QuaranCon written out all the way across, and the dragon's much smaller and doesn't have the cubed. And the answer is I updated our merch store, and this is now available. This is actually a hoodie dress, by the way, which I can't even show off properly because I'd have to back way up, but it goes all the way down to just above my knees. And for anyone who likes to be cozy, I highly recommend it. Anyway, we are here tonight with the incomparable, inimitable, and just absolutely amazing Intisar Khanani, one of my all-time favorite authors and people. And and we are here to talk about the Dauntless Path series, very specifically the latest and greatest, I think, book of the series, which is A Darkness at the Door. All three books in this series are amazing. But it starts with Thorn, which is sort of a standalone with some loose threads at the end, and then we move into Theft of Sunlight, which is definitely a book one in a duology.
But it works as a companion story to Illyria. Like it starts up right after Thorn ends, right?
Yeah, I was very excited about that when I started reading it back in the day. I was like, oh, cool. This like picks up right after, and there's lots of overlap of characters. So if you adored Thorn, which I did, then you'll be very excited to see those people again, and that's really awesome. However, they definitely take a side stage, backseat, however you want to discuss it, to Ray, who is the shining star of Theft of Sunlight and A Darkness at the Door. And I can't say enough good things about that. But before I do that, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Thanks for coming into Star. Thanks for talking to me.
Thanks for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
It's always lovely to have you. It's always lovely to talk to you. And yeah, this is fun because lately you and I have been talking a lot to each other, but not always for everyone else. So now everybody else gets to hang out.
Now we can be quirky with everyone.
That's right. We can be quirky and everyone can watch and hopefully find it entertaining. So I was super bad about promoting this because we both might have temporarily forgotten it was happening until the last moment. And so I did not spend the day promoting it as I should have. And I assume you didn't either. So here we are, and there may not be anyone to show up and ask audience questions, but when have we ever needed anyone else to talk to us to keep us going?
We're pretty good at keeping going.
I'm pretty sure we are. Yeah, we will have zero trouble. The challenge will be keeping this to within like an hour and a half block. Although I assume you need to go to bed sometimes, not soon, but like, around then. I don't know. So anyway, we'll try to keep it to a schedule of some kind. I am going to periodically hop on Twitter and poke people and tell them to come watch. Anyway, so let's get started with you. Anyone who has watched the series of interviews knows that I like to ask random personal questions before we actually dig into any writing questions. And so we're going to start with a question about horses, which is simply, tell me your best horse story, please.
This is because Ray's is the daughter of a horse rancher. Is that correct?
Well, obviously it's related, yes.
Because I did something terrible to a horse in Thorn. I mean, one or the other.
I almost wrote out a follow-up question about how your feelings towards telling a Goose Girl retelling have shifted, maybe now that you're spending more time with horses.
Well, I have stories from my childhood with horses.
There you go.
One of my favorite childhood stories is I had never really ridden a horse before, and one of my friends who was a neighbor was taking riding lessons, by which I think it meant that like she owned a pony and someone was kind of occasionally telling her what to do on the pony. Like, I don't think these were legit pony lessons. But anyhow, her
Pony
mom
lessons.
was like, would you like to go on a ride with us? And I was like, sure. So what they did is was like they put me on the horse behind my friend. And I mean, we're both like, 50-pound children. So we were not exactly heavy, even though this really was only a pony. And I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't even have stirrups. Like, what do I do? And they were like, just hold on to Kelly if you feel yourself slipping. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So we're walking on perfectly level ground on the path. And I'm like, oh, I'm slipping. So I grab my friend Kelly and take us both off the horse.
Oh my goodness.
Apparently she did not know about keeping her feet in the stirrups.
Right. Ergo the maybe not lessons actually happening.
And I have to kudos to the horse because the horse stopped.
Oh,
and
nice.
Her mom, who was leading the horse, was like, why did this horse stop? And finally looked back after tugging a couple of times. And we're both laying there on the ground with the horse.
That's amazing. I love that. Come on, horse. The kids are the kids are on the ground.
I will say we were wearing helmets, and that probably saved our brains. So, if
Always
you ever put your child and someone else's child up on a pony, make sure they have helmets on.
Always a good idea. Wow. That is a fabulous story. That's epic. I don't really so then I mean that maybe that's why there was a goose girl retelling.
That was a good horse.
Yeah. Well, and so was oh my gosh, now I've forgotten the horse's name.
Falada.
Thank you, Falada. Falada. Sorry. So was Falada. And look what happened to him. Sorry. Okay.
When I was revising Thorn for Harper Teen, because initially indie published and then Harper Teen picked it up, my dad actually, he sat me down. Like, it wasn't even like in passing or on the phone. He sat me down and was like, now you know that you can change what happens to the horse.
Oh, like, man.
I'm really sorry, Dad, but like, I can't. Also, I'm following the Goose Girl fairy tale. And also, like, this is important to the story. But I'm not sure he's forgiven me for not coming up with an
alternative
way to avoid that.
Yeah. Fair enough. That's a hard one.
It is.
That's one that people get upset about. I actually specifically went and looked up after I read Thorn, and we didn't know each other yet. I went and looked up a couple plot points from Thorn fairy tale retelling because I was like, I bet this is a fairy tale retelling because these particular things that it included the death of the horse. Sorry. But which is, I mean, it's a spoiler, but it's not if you just know that the Goose Girl's a thing, and then it's not a spoiler because that's just part of the story. And then Goose Girl came up, like that was instantly part of it, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, I guess I forgive this author who I don't know for this particular plot point. But I had a moment of being like, I'm upset about this.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If it's any consolation, I cried a lot myself.
I'm sure you did. I believe you. I have no question. There's no question in my mind. And also like, and now we are, good buddies. And I'm 100% certain that you would not kill a horse for no good reason, even in fiction. But seriously, like I finished the book and was like, that also, it just seemed, like, it's like, it is relevant, very relevant to the story, but it's also sort of like, if it weren't a retelling, maybe
would I have done this?
Yeah, right. Like, anyway, whatever. There was also, it wasn't just that, there was one other thing, and I can't even remember what it was right now. But so it wasn't just umbrage about Horse mistreatment. Anyway,
Look, fairy tales are weird.
they are
The
always
logic is even weirder. And if you're going to retell a fairy tale, you do have to cherry pick what you're going to keep. But sometimes there are like critical elements,
totally.
and I felt like that was a critical one, not just for the fairy tale itself, but also for the character's growth.
Totally.
There were some weird things about that fairy tale.
Well, and I read, I had never read The Goose Girl, and so then when I found it, I read a summary of it in the article I found about it, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, there was some other stuff that didn't make it in.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. But it is true of all fairy tales, and there's always, what are you gonna do? There's stuff that, and that makes sense in terms of character growth for sure. I can definitely see why it was relevant, and especially there's no way to talk about it without spoilers about the end of the book. But the
end of the book, and that part,
so totally, no, it makes sense. It's all good. I have long since forgiven you. I forgave you before we even became friends. So well, that's good. You're in the clear. Whew. But my dog is chewing on my ankle right now. So if I seem distracted, it's because I'm being bitten.
And your dog is a super cute little puppy who is teething.
Yes, that's correct.
That, just to clarify, you are not generally food for your dog.
No, she is not. She's not usually eat me or try to eat me. She's currently barking at something outside, probably a squirrel. Let's see if we can get an action shot.
Oh, look at her. She's
on
she's so cute.
She's gotten much bigger, and now she's on guard. Pika, you don't need to bark, sweetheart. Anyway. Okay, so moving on. Animal distractions. And she was not trying to eat me. She was just she was chewing on a towel, and it kind of got a little bit wrapped around my heel, and then she was not distinguishing between towel and my ankle, which might have been the point because she's feeling a little bit mischievous. But anyway, I swear she's not trying to kill me. Hey, we have a viewer. It's Missy 306 who watches all of our stuff, also known as Aquavanatus, also known as Lois. Hi, Lois.
We love you, Lois.
Thank you for coming. It's lovely to see you. So here we are, moving on to our next question. You have a few good animal stories. And yes, horses are relevant to the Dauntless Path series for sure. But crows maybe less so. But you have a really good crow story, and I want to share it I want you to share it with people. So talk to me about the time you rescued a crow.
Okay. So in the early days of the internet, not to date myself too badly, I think I was home for summer. No, I had retired at the ripe old age of 24.
Oh,
gone home to stay with my parents.
Okay.
No job prospects. I was just done.
Okay, fair.
I had my quarter life crisis. I was trying to figure out what to do, and while I was trying to figure out what to do, these children showed up at my door, and they knew that I was like the equivalent of a crazy cat lady when you don't keep cats in your own home.
But you take care of everyone else.
I took care of all the stray cats, and there were a lot of stray cats. My parents lived in Saudi Arabia. We lived, they just worked there. We were in an apartment complex. Yeah. And we had maybe 20 cats that lived in our complex. And probably about 10 of them had like deep and authentic relationships with me. And the other 10 would recognize me when food was necessary. Right. And so all the kids knew I was a sucker. Anytime a cat needed help, like I would show up I would put these cats in cardboard boxes and go to the vet, and the vet would be like, every time this lady shows up, there's a different cat in the cardboard box, But anyways, these kids showed up and they're like, so there's a crow. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, on the ground. And I was like, okay. Not a lot of detail. Let's go figure out what's going on. So I go downstairs, and there's a baby crow on the ground. and there are two, it's evening, it's, it's dark out, and there are two cats that are like actively stalking it. So I was like, okay, got to do something about the baby crow. So I went and got my cardboard box. I put the kids on duty to keep the cats away. I went and got my cardboard box and my like old dishcloth, because like I am not like a expensive equipment kind of person. I'm like, what do I need to save an animal? Some cardboard. So I took this bird upstairs, and then the next day, and I tried to do some research. There was not a lot actually to the internet back then, so I couldn't find much to do around like what to do when you rescue a bird. So I was still figuring this out. And the next morning I was like, well, makes sense to at least try and find the family. So I put the crow in a cardboard, I grab her cardboard box, and I take them down to where we found the crow. And as I'm getting there, there was an adult crow sitting up on like a fence post, or it's like an awning kind of.
Okay.
And they looked at me, and then they turned their head and they looked in the box, and they saw the baby crow, and I was like, I am so dead. They're gonna dive bomb me. I am 100% dead, right? Like they're gonna like go right through this scarf and pull out all my hair. Like this is gonna be bad. And they launched into the sky, screaming bloody murder, and just circled me. And within like 1 minute, I had about 100 crows flying above me and cawing, and not a one of them dive bombed me. I was like, okay, I think they think that I'm actually a decent person, so this is good. So I carried the crow back to my balcony. I went into the stairwell and I waved from the window, and they followed me all the way around to the back of my building, and we're on the fence across the wall across from our balcony, and they watched me, and I'm like, great. And I picked up the crow to show them that baby was okay.
Yeah.
And I realized the baby had broken its leg.
Oh.
Yeah. So I took the baby crow in the cardboard box to the vet, and the vet was like, who's in your box? And I was like, you'll never guess. He's like, a cat. And I'm like, nope. It's a crow with a broken leg.
Oh my gosh.
He's just like, I don't know. He was lovely. His name was Dr. Sasha. He was from Serbia. And he just thought I was delightful, probably because everyone else was there with like their super fancy cages, their super fancy animals, like they're
super fancy pets,
like, squirrel ones. They're like, they do all like the coolest creature you could think, and then I'm there with like stray cats and crows. And so he performed a surgery on the crow. We actually the bone had somehow gotten infected just overnight. So they had to amputate. So we amputated below the knee, backwards knee, and then
bird elbow, I guess.
He called in an assistant, and then I was his secondary assistant, and I helped hold the crow and like did the whole thing. And then he gave me like a free gift of antiseptic for that, and sent me home. And to this, like, it took me until last year to realize that actually animal surgeries are really expensive, because he would just charge us for an office visit every time. So he was really delightful.
That's so nice.
It took care of this crow, raised it. I've got in touch with a rescue organization. They were like, put the crow in a nest, like build it a little nest, put it up in a tree close to the parents' nest. And hopefully, like, the parents will take it back in, and you'll be fine. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. So my dad borrows a 2-story ladder from the maintenance crew. The maintenance crew comes out and just stares at him like, are you seriously climbing up into this tree? There are our flock of 100 crows are there to comment on this whole situation. And we like tie the nest up there, and he like sends down a pillowcase on a rope, and we put the baby in there and haul him up and put him in his nest, and we're like, great, we're all done, all set. We go home, we check back in like an hour or two later, and we can see the parents have visited the baby.
Oh yay.
Like, okay, we are done, right? Like, we've done our good deed of the decade, we are good. And I really thought I was done. And then the next day I was sitting at my computer working, and these two crows started flying past the balcony window, and they're screaming, and I was like, oh, these crows didn't get the memo. The baby's not here anymore. Like, you don't have to sound the alarm. Baby is fine. I'll show you where baby is. So I go out. I'm literally talking to the crows and telling them this because that's the kind of person I am. And
I would
like,
do the same.
I go down
So
the stairs and I go out and I'm like, look, I'm here. Baby is fine. Just follow me. And I start walking back to the park. Closer I get to the park, the more crows I hear. I turn the corner of the park. There's the whole flock of 100 crows screaming bloody murder because the baby had fallen out of his nest again. And those two crows had literally come to get me. They were like, we know where the crazy crow lady is. Like, go get her, bring her back to save our baby. Which I just like, crows are just, they're so intelligent.
They're so smart. Yeah.
So smart. And the rest of the flock stayed there and kept the baby safe. So after that, I was not trying to like return this. I was like, you've only got one leg. We need to keep it functional, man. So he stayed on our balcony until I actually had to travel. So our neighbor upstairs took him in, and the crows literally just like jumped up a balcony and kept talking to him, and aunts and uncles. He was never alone. There was always someone talking to him or visiting him. And then eventually he like hopped up on their windowsill and like tapped the window, and then he left. It was like he literally said goodbye to them.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. So sorry, that was a really long version of the story.
That I'm so glad though, because I feel like I missed some of those details last time, and it was really sweet. Because you've told me that story before, and it came up because we were talking about how smart crows are.
Yeah.
And that was that's it's an even better story the second time. Also, like, is that making it into a book anytime soon? I feel like that is perfect fantasy sidekick
I thought
fodder.
about writing like a picture book that's kind of based on this. I think it would appeal to a younger crowd.
Totally, it would. Yeah. So, although, I mean, Crow Companion, whose origin story is something like that, would also be super cool.
Also true.
Just throwing that out there.
I have Ray's little sister Bean, and she's like an animal person, and so I do have to come up with some fun like animal future for her. animal creatures in her yes. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm a little tired.
That's okay. I know what you mean. For her story,
animal companion things.
Yes. True. Yeah. No, that's true. I forgot about how awesome Bean is with animals. Not, just
there is a secret to that, which, if you're a Kickstarter backer and you get the dragon story, you'll find out some of that.
Oh, I'm excited. Truth. Because I am, and I will. That's very exciting. Yay. Sorry. Any Dauntless Path related stories are exciting to me, and especially Ray's sisters, because I think you have maybe thoughts about. Oh, you know what? We're getting ahead of ourselves. We should talk about. Let's talk about the actual book first. But now I'm like, oh, what plans for the future? What other stories are you going to tell? Because I forget that the book just came out.
Yeah, I have a copy here.
Yay!
This is the UK edition, and it's so pretty. And
it is so pretty.
It has a little bit of gilt foil in it.
So nice. Good old Yana. This is the name of that font. Sorry.
Yeah, the font is.
I love that font. It's so pretty. So yay. Sorry, I'm so distracted by the idea of more Dauntless Path stories. My brain just like latched onto that and was like, oh, where are we? Okay. But reining it in, staying focused. We also have Anita Stewart is also watching. Hi, Anita. It's good to see you. And if either of you have questions, or if anyone else shows up and you have questions in a little bit, please pop your questions into the chat at any time, and I will direct them to Intisar. In the meantime, we're just going to keep chatting, which, as you can see, we do not struggle with. So, okay. That was a pretty solid setup of personal stuff. I might ask you some slightly humorous and more personal questions again at the end, but let's dive into actually talking about books. And let's start with, let's talk about your publishing journey. So we're here with A Darkness at the Door. It's the third book in the Dauntless Path series. The first book in the Dauntless Path series, Thorn, was A, the first book you ever wrote, right? B, the first book you ever published. Is that true?
Yeah.
And when you first published it, it was indie pub.
Yeah.
And it was very successful as an indie book, yes. And then Harper Teen nabbed it. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then tell me more. So let's just talk about the whole thing. So like, you, if I recall correctly, started working on Thorn ages ago. My dog is now barking a bunch outside, so I'm going to mute myself and go deal with that. I'll take you with. You can watch my face as I say things to the dog. But you go ahead and talk about the journey with Thorn, at least in as much as it relates. Like, we don't have to dive too deep on Thorn because we're talking about A Darkness at the Door. But like, talk about that whole journey. My dog is losing her mind. Muting.
No problem. So Thorn was the first book I wrote. I wrote it my senior year of university. I kind of challenged myself for unknown reasons. I had said to myself, well, if I've always wanted to be a writer, I should just go ahead and write a book. And I had I love looking out your door, V. I had just transferred, so I had an overload of courses that year. I had a 20-hour-a-week job. I was running a couple of clubs, and for some reason I was like, yes, clearly this is the year I need to write a book.
Why not write a book?
So I in retrospect, I'm like, wow, I how did I even have energy to think that?
That is truly impressive. I mean, it's very clear that you did not yet have children.
Yes. I lived in an apartment with my brother, and one week one of us cooked and the other week the other, it switched off cooking and cleaning. It was really fabulous. Yeah, so I wrote Thorn as a challenge to myself, and I thought if I used a fairy tale that was like slightly quirky and weird and had a lot of holes, but was also clearly a beloved story, and had held up over time somehow or the other, that like it couldn't be that hard to write a book. It tells you how naive I was. So I wrote this book. I wrote it a chapter a week. It was terrible. Terrible. The first time I sat down to read it, I literally almost fell asleep. It was so boring. And I had to sit down and be like, well, what's wrong? And it's like, well, I really like my main character, so I've been really nice to her. That's got to go. And then, the motivations didn't make sense because Alira had a happy family. And the reason I gave her a happy family was because a lot of YA fantasy doesn't have happy families. And so when I checked that out, I was like, I'm going to give another character at some point a happy family. I'm going to do this. And so that's what I did with Ray. And it's not that it's a fully functional, like there's dysfunction in the family. There are things that like they could improve, but they love each other at the end of the day, care about each other. Alira's family and Thorn, very much not. So I mean the story, and I wrote it in third person point of view when I first wrote it, and that is not the point of view that I write my best in. As it turns out, I write a much more immediate emotional story, and I'm writing first person, so I had to literally rewrite the whole book in a different point of view.
Gotcha.
In order to like actually make it worth reading. So that book, like I spent a decade revising it. I worked on other projects in between. It's not like it was the only thing I was doing, but I kept coming back to Thorn because over the years I grew with it, and it had a lot of resonance for me, especially as kind of Alira grows and she's struggling with questions of justice and what justice is without mercy. And those kinds of things. These are, I started writing it my senior year of university, just to date myself. I started writing it right around the year of 9/11.
Right.
And so as I was revising it, I was also looking at like cycles of violence and oppression in our world. And when you're looking for justice and you do it in a cruel way, or a way that doesn't consider the humanity of others, like is it
Yeah.
really justice? Like,
Mhm.
is it gonna only start more
More, yeah.
violence, or is it going to actually help? And so those questions are folded into Thorn, even though it has nothing to do with acts of terrorism.
No. Nope.
Thankfully, and I needed that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then Thorn published in 2012. I indie published it. Again, I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? I had a toddler and I was 9 months pregnant, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna, quit a job and stay home, I should clearly launch a writing career. Because who doesn't have loads of time with a toddler
With
and
the
newborn? So
yeah.
I'm very grateful that Thorn did really well, because I was learning what I was doing when I didn't have a lot of time.
Right.
And I had always meant to write this companion story featuring Ray. But when I sat down to work on it, I really couldn't get it to come together. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. I couldn't figure out why the heart of the story was not there. Like, I had plot points, and there are scenes that are in the final book that I wrote 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But I couldn't get the emotional arc of the story to gel. Like, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. And I'm a very intuitive writer, so it was like, I could plot all you like, it didn't actually help with the development of the story.
Yeah.
So I set it aside, and I indie published a couple other books in the Sunbolt Chronicles, which is a completely unrelated set of stories, which is a lot of fun. And there's a crow, a helpful crow in Sunbolt. But it has it's just there for a chapter. It has a very short place, but it is, that I have already placed the crow in a place of love in my story. Yeah, maybe future crows too.
Right.
And then Harper Teen, actually my agent found me through a BookBub sale on Thorn.
Oh, cool.
She read Thorn and she loved it.
Nice.
And she reached out to me and was like, have you ever thought about traditional publishing? And I was like, funny you should mention that. For years to find an agent didn't work, and I indie published, and yay.
Yeah.
So we had a whole bunch of talks about diverse voices in mainstream stories and media, and this was right around the 2016 election.
Yes.
And so the election happened, and my agent called me and was like, really, would you sign with me? And I was like, yes.
Yes.
And at that time I planned to kind of bring her a new manuscript. I wasn't planning to sell Thorn. And so I wasn't quite sure. We were talking about what that would be. And she went out to lunch with our editor at Harper Teen. And as they were catching up, before they actually talked about the manuscripts they were there to discuss, Emmanuel was just like, oh, I've just signed this new author. I'm really excited. I read her book. This is how I found her. She's like amazing. And I can't wait to see what, I mean, she really talked me up. I can't wait to see what she brings me. Right. She was just very excited.
Yeah.
Well, that editor went home and bought a copy of Thorn.
Yes.
And read it, and then called up my agent and was like, I want this author and I want this book.
Oh my gosh.
So like every non-traditional way into publishing. I know, right? It was very serendipitous. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
I'm very grateful for it. Yeah. And so Harper Teen signed for 2 books. And because they wanted an original book, and I was like, well, I know I have this book with Ray, and I think I finally figured out what I need to do with it.
Right.
And I told my agent, I said, I don't know if it's 1 book or 2.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure. And she's like, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, we're just going to call it 1 book, because like, you don't want to sell a book that's not going to exist.
Right.
I was like, fair, and then things like the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So Thorn released in March 24th, 2020, which is like exactly when lockdown happened across the US. So they actually released the day after Ohio bookstores closed.
Right. I mean, you had to cancel your launch party, right? Because it was.
Yeah, I mean, I canceled it in advance. I was like, hey, everyone, I don't think this is going to be a good idea. I don't care if you're not sure. Like, I'm sure this is not a good idea. So yeah. But there was it was a tough time. It was
Yeah.
a very weird time to be like, hey, everyone, buy my book. The world is burning down.
Yeah.
Don't know what's happening.
And also that was before all those pieces were in place with like
For
all
online
the
thing.
the online, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll deliver it to your house, and it won't, like local delivery, and or
local
we'll
delivery.
still that was not a thing yet, right? Like that happened a few weeks, months later, and then,
it took a little while to come into place. So they're just kind of had a rocky start. And it's done all right. It's done all right. And then Theft released, and Theft was it was amazing to write. It was a challenge. But it came together well.
It's such a great book.
Released, but it didn't sell as well as Harper Teen had hoped. And again, it was a second pandemic release.
Yeah.
Thankfully not in lockdown.
Yes.
But it just kind of it didn't do as well as they'd hoped. And so they kind of watched it for a couple months, and then they were like, yeah, we're gonna pass on Ray's second book. Which was disappointing, but it is what it is. Publishers are our business.
Yes, they are.
And so that was their decision. But my UK publisher, they were amazing. My agent contacted them and was like, so you know how you were planning to buy your final manuscript from the American publisher? Well, there is no American publisher. And they were like, don't worry about it. They provided all the editing, the copy editing, the proofreading. They did everything. And then they worked with me very actively. They knew I was going to be putting out the North American edition myself. And I actually ended up working with a really amazing indie co-op called Snowy Wings Publishing for the North American edition. But Hotkey has just been incredible in terms of they just provided me with the final manuscript with all the editing and the proofreading, the copy editing. Like normally those are sold to the publisher, and they were just like, yeah, no, it's yours. And I was like, I love you.
That is so sweet.
It was really it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, you're actually investing in the author. Like, a lot of publishers they'll invest in the book.
Right.
And I really feel like Hotkey was there to invest in me as an author in my career. And that was really amazing to have, especially at such a time where, my big publisher had stepped out of the scene.
Yeah.
To get that support was really special.
That's really, so awesome of them, but also a very smart move on their part. I'm sorry, because these books are freaking fantastic. And haven't you gotten a couple of starred reviews already for the Darkness of the Door?
Yeah, Darkness got 2 starred reviews, which was pretty amazing, from Kirkus and from Forward Reviews.
Yeah. So Hotkey clearly played a smarter long game. That's my opinion.
I won't argue. I might be biased, but I won't argue.
You might be biased, but look, I became friends with you after I fell in love with your writing, and your books are fantastic. I think I'd already even read and loved Theft before we actually started hanging out. I had definitely read and loved Thorn before that, but and Theft is amazing, and The Darkness of the Door is even better. And which is so hard to do with the second book in a duology. That's so Hotkey is lovely but also smart. They are playing they made the right call, they made the right bet, they made the right business decision, and they're very lovely people. Based on everything you've said about them. So that's what I'm saying. That's the opinion from over here. The absolute peanut gallery. He's me. But here I am, and that's what I say. So okay. So that's sort of we got ups and downs of the actual
publishing
journey. Diving a little bit more into the book itself, for Darkness at the Door now, people who are watching who have maybe either already read it, there won't be spoilers, so we're not talking spoilers, but but who appreciate more of the journey, perhaps for having read books 1 and 2 already, or not 1 and 2, but reading Thorn and Theft of Sunlight. I feel like we just have to refer to them by title because it's not like they're 100% sequential. Ray's first book is really the most important one as far as this reference. I don't know. I can't. Why am I talking? Why did people put me in charge of a show? So anyway, this book, I know I put myself in charge, so it was kind of stupid. Executive decisions. I don't know who's making them.
It's probably the puppy.
It's mostly the puppy. Yeah, mostly the puppy. Sometimes the 5-year-old. Anyway, but so Darkness at the Door was its own special journey. It is so good. I want to start with that. I want to lead with that. It's freaking fantastic. You nailed it. And I haven't even read like the final version yet, which I'm so excited, but I'm waiting for the special edition hardcover. I want to like read it on paper.
So for everyone watching, Virginia was kind enough to be an emergency backup beta reader for me at the 11th hour. It was literally like, Virginia, I have 72 hours. Can you read this and tell me how to fix 3 things?
And I was so delighted to do so because at that point, like I was so excited to, like, I'd finished Theft whenever, like I read it right when it came out and was done with it immediately because I read fairly quickly. And so then I have been so stoked to read the next installment ever since.
Because
and
of the cliffhanger.
So yeah, it does. And so then you're all, I don't know, could you read this quickly? And I'm like, yes, but inject it directly into my veins, please. I will happily devour this book. No, twist my arm. I volunteered so fast and had no trouble doing it in the allotted amount of time. Except, I mean, where I, like making time to read is always.
Yeah.
But it was anyway delightful. So that was all to say that like the book is freaking fantastic, but I know it gave you some trouble. Pika, don't bite the couch. Sorry. What did you drop? What are you looking for? This dog.
Oh goodness.
She's just sticking her head. What is she? Pika, what'd you do? What's back there? Why are you? It's your blue ball. I'll get it. I can't tell if she's putting stuff back there.
Everything needs to stop for the blue ball. You better go.
Hang on.
If it was the green ball, we could probably
less of an issue, but the blue ball is clutch. It's key to happiness here. Sorry, everybody. So anyway, so the book is freaking amazing, but yeah, like it gave you some trouble. I am aware. And so let's talk about that. Why did this book give you shingles?
Oh, we're gonna go there, are we?
Oh, we're going there. Going straight in. Let's talk about it.
So if anyone doesn't know what shingles is, if you got
we should give some context.
As a child, if you got chickenpox as a child, and you thought that you were over it, it can come back for you at the worst possible moment, and
it's brought on by stress.
Down.
Yes.
Yeah. So. It doesn't come back as chickenpox, it comes back as shingles. And that usually means that like you end up with like blisters and like fabulousness along
doesn't it do like it can do nerve damage theoretically?
It runs along a band of nerves. And so and if you ever feel like an ant crawling sensation and you have like little bumps coming up in a specific like section of your body, whether for me it was across my face and my eye, a lot of people it's on your torso, wait, go to your doctor, because if you stop antivirals within 72 hours, they will actually help. And if you don't, there's no help. And I got in because I was working on this beautiful book. And there were certain aspects of it that were very challenging for me. So I love reading romances, but I've never really written a book that had an all-out romance subplot. I've written books that have a romantic interest, but it's much more of like a subdued romance. romance. Like they're not,
Yeah.
it's more about respect actually in Thorn than it is about love.
Right. Yes.
And in A Darkness at the Door, like a theft, I'd like basically set up the potential for romance. And in Darkness, I needed to deliver. And it turned out that learning how to write a romance when you're on contract
At the 11th hour.
Even if you imprinted on like Pride and Prejudice as a child,
right.
is like a whole other ballgame. So and then there were other aspects of the story that weren't coming together. And so I was kind of, and I'm homeschooling my children. Yeah. And
still a pandemic.
So it's still a pandemic. So I was, staying up till 1 a.m. and then I would wake up at like 5 a.m. and sometimes I would wake up and just not be able to sleep because I was stressed. And sometimes I would like wake up and attempt to work. And it was just like, it was a disaster waiting to happen. So
yeah,
I got my edits into my editor at 4 a.m. on Monday morning, which is 9 a.m. in the UK time.
Yeah.
So it was in on time. And I went to bed and then I woke up and I called my doctor, and at 4 p.m. that afternoon, I got diagnosed with shingles.
Oh my gosh.
And I was sitting there and I was like, so what causes shingles? And they're like, well, usually like we don't see it except in like older individuals over the age, like they have a vaccine for shingles. It's not approved for anyone under the age of 50 because you're not considered to be at risk.
Right.
I am not yet 50. And she's like, well, sometimes stress can induce it. Have you been stressed about anything? I was like, funny you should ask that.
just yeah.
So I had like all these plans of the things I was going to do the next 2 weeks. And what I actually ended up doing was laying in bed with the blinds closed. And for a good chunk of that time, I couldn't even like concentrate enough to listen to audiobooks. It was just miserable. My whole eye had swollen up, and I was going to see like the eye doctor every 2 days to make sure that like, I mean, I don't know what they could have done because all they ever did was like give me eye drops and be like, so lesions are forming. And I'm like, this isn't helping, guys. I can continue the drops without you looking in my eye and telling me the things you're worried about. But I think that one of the reasons that my eye didn't sustain any damage is because we were able to start the antivirals when we did, because I had like this weird ants crawling, like, and it was the nerves doing things over the weekend. And so when I got in first thing on Monday afternoon, I was
like, just squeaked in.
Yeah, I squeaked in. I was literally like, I think we're at 70 hours. I called the pharmacy and they were like, oh yeah, I just got here. I was like, I need to start these antivirals now. It's an emergency. Can you get them for me? And they were like, half an hour, okay. I was like, yes, I love you. Thank you. So
oh man.
So yeah, it was Darkness. And I think a lot of it was also kind of being in the pandemic. I was exhausted. I battled burnout in October, and then in December I gave myself shingles. So it was this progression, It was actually really funny because that final weekend I was like, I'm doing really well. I haven't burned myself out. Like I didn't give myself a repetitive stress injury because I did that with a theft of sunlight.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm holding myself together physically.
And meanwhile your nervous system is like, ha ha.
I was yet again another example of Intisar being way too naive.
All good, or it's not, but I mean, you learned, and luckily you squeaked in getting treatment just in time. Because I'm now talking and unmuted, I just want to show my dog is currently the blue ball. Oh no, now she's leaving. But if anyone kept hearing a little whoosh, 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 whoosh in the background, that's what that noise is. It's a squeaky ball with the squeaker chewed out. Like I think she just put a hole in it. And so we didn't actually take the speaker out, even though it was kind of annoying. We didn't get that far. She did it herself. And now there's a small child playing with the dog and the ball behind me. So I will continue to mute myself between questions.
We're good.
Yeah. So anyway, there's the whole house is in the living room now. I should maybe move to the office. Everyone, come with me on a journey.
Speaking of journeys,
I have to take my charger though too, because running this whole
so
the whole
while
Zoom
you're
business
getting situated, I'm
just keep why don't you talk?
That the way we got to know each other really well is that you reached out to me about another project that we've had the opportunity to work on together, which was the Alchemy of Sorrow anthology. So, Virginia,
Yes,
take a moment to tell us about this anthology that you invited me to be a part of. And
oh my goodness,
amazing.
Okay, well, I've just come into
Putting you on the spot here.
Realized that I didn't bring the standing desk with me, and this room is an absolute mess. So I can't actually put down the laptop without showing off just how messy
can you
this
sit
room
against the door with the laptop on your lap? Because that is my go-to position.
I'm actually just looking. I could theoretically, if I close the door, I mean, the thing is, like, whatever. I'm a human. I live in a home that is like never clean. Which I'm actually, anyone who's going to be at Gen Con, I'm bringing 8 boxes of books and that duffel bag to Gen Con.
Nice.
To sell books. So, and now if I close those closet doors, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
And now I can actually,
very organized.
Sit. Let's see if the question is, if I put the laptop on the desk, is it low enough that you can see the absolutely massive mess on the
No, we can't see any mess. You look extremely organized here.
So far so good. But now I can't plug in the laptop. Everything's great. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be just fine. So anyway, I will sort out plugging the laptop in a minute, maybe. It actually has 2/3 of the battery, so it might be fine. So I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna pretend that I have a standing desk. Okay, cool. So yeah, the Alchemy of Sorrow. You can't ask me questions because my brain isn't working. What did you want to know about it? Why?
I was wondering if you wanted to share a minute about what it is, because honestly, that's how I got to know you, and
it's true.
We did so much work together on that anthology. It was kind of it was in some ways life-changing for me. So yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Just a word about like what the anthology is and the awesomeness of the Kickstarter that we planned together.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so the Alchemy of Sorrow is an anthology of fantasy and science fiction stories that all are centered around the themes of grief and hope. And the idea came to me because I wrote a short story about a month after losing both of my parents on the same day. In unrelated events, because 2020 was just being extra that day. And I wrote a story that was very much about losing my mom. And I didn't really know what to do with it, because like, what do you do with a fantasy story in which like one scene is like fighting a literal demon with a sword, and the next scene is very much dealing with like actual real world human grief. Yeah, I just knocked over some tape. And and I wasn't sure what to do with it, but eventually I decided to reach out to Sarah Chorn, who is an editor that I knew from mostly QuaranCon stuff and Spiffo stuff, and she and I had chatted a bit about a lot of other things, but I thought I knew that she wrote a lot of really emotional prose, and I knew that she was a really good editor, and I thought that it would be great to work with her on a project like an anthology, and that maybe she would, it was sort of like to even just bounce the idea off of someone, like, is this a thing that's a reasonable project? Like,
Mhm.
do you think we could get enough authors to be involved in a fantasy and science fiction anthology that's all about grief? Is that the thing? And but she said, yeah, absolutely. She was all in. And so we both started brainstorming who else we would invite. And you were one of the very first people I thought of. And we both sort of came up with lists, and we started inviting people, and some people said yes, some people said no, and we wound up with the group that we have now, 13 of us. And so then there was the question of how to fund the whole thing. We wanted to pay our authors, we wanted to pay our editor, we wanted to make it look good, and sort of add to it, like have it be, I don't know, I feel like art always adds more layers to any story. Adding visual art like deepens the experience. So there was talk of that. And so then, as you know, we started brainstorming ways to accomplish that. And I suggested a Kickstarter because I've done one before. And I thought that with the 13 of us, we had a very good chance of being successful at raising the amount we needed to pay the people we wanted to hire. And and everyone was like, okay, Virginia, but like you'll have to run it because we don't know what we're doing. And I was like, it's okay, as long as people help me post updates and stuff. And then Intisar comes in, and I don't know, this is another example of you like in college being like, oh, I have all these bajillion things I'm doing, but why don't I also write a novel? And you were also like, oh, well, I, like have this novel on deadline and all these other things, but sure, I'll help you organize a Kickstarter. And I, like do more. Cause because you very reasonably were like, I have my own Kickstarter coming later this year. And, being in on the back end of a Kickstarter would be useful to me. Ha ha ha.
Basically, like, take me as your apprentice. And you did.
And I did. And then I just made you do so much of the work because I was struggling, but it was fabulous. Yes, and I agree that it was life-changing on a number of levels. One, because I feel like I got a new best friend, and also just so many friends, like our whole author crew, like I don't know, there's such a lovely group of people, and then also the Kickstarter community and everything else. And the Kickstarter itself was also amazingly successful, and so we were blown away. We had a $6,800 initial goal, and we raised over $24,000 in a month, and had 605 backers in, oh my gosh, so many countries. I have shipped things to so many different countries in the last few days. Yeah. It's been great. Last few weeks, months. So that's that. And now the public launch is November 1st. And we also joined in with the sister group for it's not Snowy Wings Publishing, it's Crimson Fox.
Yeah.
But I was trying to come up with, like, is it the sister organization? No, it's the subsidiary. It's a subsidiary, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a related imprint.
Yes, a related imprint. And so November 1st is our public launch date, and we're very excited. And meanwhile, our backers are already starting to get their books, and they've got books in hand. Ebooks have been out for almost 2 months now, and the physical books are showing up on people's doorsteps as we speak. So that's all cool. So I think I've now spoken way more than necessary about that.
Well, it was, like you said, it was amazing getting to know you, getting to know the anthology crew, not just the other authors, but the artists and the editor. Like, we are all together on Discord, and it was like having a whole community that was actually brought together around grief and hope. And it is one of the most genuine and supportive environments I've had the opportunity to be in. So it was really incredible. And I learned how to run a Kickstarter, which was very helpful in funding the audiobook for Darkness at the Door.
Which also went quite well, I hear.
It did. For which I am very grateful. And someone named Virginia may have also helped make all the graphics. I don't know if you know her.
I
may have also provided all kinds of advice on very short notice about what the heck am I doing.
Whatever, you'd already learned it all from helping me panic through all the problems with our case.
I feel like a lot of our relationship is based on like mutual panic moments.
Totally. I don't know, there's a bonding experience from like being up at 2:00 in the morning going, oh my God, do these numbers add up?
Did we do the math wrong?
And then the next day being like, oh no, it was actually all okay. Yeah. Certainly at least one friendship has been built off of those experiences. But also I feel like, yeah,
you write these stories about, people who go on adventures and they go through these like exhausting, terrifying ordeals and they become like friends for life. And I feel like we kind of did that, Virginia.
It's true. Like the closest you can come in a pandemic. This is like
as a writer, this was the closest I could come to it. Period. Yeah. I'm really not going to let some wizard whisk me out of my house, or I'm not gonna like go pull a sword out of stone. No.
I totally would.
Sword in stone, okay. It's staying there.
Leaving it.
No. But if someone's like, hey, a story, anthology, grief and hope, raise some money for it, I'm like, take my heart and my whole life too.
Well, and I did, or at least your story, and
sorry,
I definitely took your story.
And no one gets my firstborn child. That one's mine.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm likewise never like, I'm never giving up the kid. Sorry.
All right. Either of them, honestly, really, no. Can't have my secondborn either.
No, nobody gets the children. That's the thing is like, so that you were like, well, I'm not gonna be sword in the stone and blah, wizard whisk me away. But if the call is like, are you gonna, fight this battle so your kid is safe? I'm like, well, yes, actually.
Yeah.
I'm 100% there. Give me the freaking sword. Give me the sword.
Pick up the telephone and rally in the streets. That's what that is for me.
How many people I gotta stab? I'll stab. Protecting the child.
Figuratively speaking.
Well, am I saving my kid's life? No, okay. Sorry. Yes, figuratively. Anyone who's listening doesn't know me.
I mean, literally speaking, if we are in a moment of violence, absolutely. But generally, I hope we won't get there.
No, yes, I would very much prefer for there not to be any stabbing. Very much, very much. Because if we get to the point where I have to stab someone, things are not good. We don't want to be in that place.
Really stabbing anyone anywhere is always not good. We're just gonna.
I know. Well, but this is what I mean. Like, if but I guess what I'm trying to, yeah. What I meant to say.
Derail you as much as possible, Virginia.
Look, aren't we supposed to be talking about you? You have a brand new book out, and it's really good. Stop deflecting.
We've been over that part already.
No, we haven't. Not enough. Okay, look.
What else?
So there's this book. Okay. And okay, I think we actually, what's important? We are talking to people ostensibly all over the world, but a lot of them are going to be in North America. Mm-hmm. So we should probably point out that while the ebook is currently launched and available to anyone, anywhere, if someone does not order their books from the UK as a thing that they can do, and not like you can't order them to the US from the UK, that's not a thing. What we're saying is if you live in North America and you would like a paperback or no, just a hardcover copy of A Darkness at the Door, then you have to wait just a few more days because August 2nd is the release date of the hardcover.
And it's going to be so pretty.
It is going to be.
I can't show you how pretty because I'm still waiting for my copies to arrive.
Oh no, it's still not there. Although, you know what? Okay, my proof copy for Alchemy of Sorrow hasn't arrived yet either. So they're currently.
But I will say that in addition to very pretty cover, it's going to have the American treatment to match the American editions, the title treatment.
I have Theft and Thorn in the other room. I was going to hold them up, but they're in the other room now because I moved in here.
I've got one over there.
Go get it.
Should I go get it?
Yeah, okay. You go wait. You go get it. I'll entertain.
I go wait.
You go wait. I walk. No. So the titling for this series is gorgeous and done by a very custom designed by a specific artist whose name I do not know, but Intisar can probably tell us when she gets back. And it's different for the UK version and the US version. The US version is this amazing hand-done lettering like that, thorn and there, the theft of sunlight, and the darkness matches. And actually, if you look at the little icon for this YouTube video, you will see the US cover.
Though. I do have the absolutely amazing paperback proof.
Oh yes!
That Virginia made the cover for me because we were dealing with supply chain issues, and so that is why I ordered my proof in paperback, because it prints a lot faster that way, but I didn't have a paperback cover. So Virginia, again, at the 11th hour, took the hardcover case wrap and like cut it into pieces and made it fit the paperback thing, so I could just be able to look at the inside of the book. So this is like, just look at the title.
Just like ignore the sides and how it's all not lined up properly, because seriously, we just took the hardcover and slapped it on there. And by we, I mean me.
Cool.
It is gorgeous.
And this titling is because of the Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yay. Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name of the artist that does the lettering.
Her name is Jenna, and she preferred to just have me reference her as Jenna.
Yeah. Very good.
So it does have a last name. I'm just not saying it out loud.
Very good. Excellent. Well, we definitely wanted to respect her wishes, so that makes sense. And we should point out the cover art is done by the incomparable Jenny Zemenek.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know this is a fun game of like realizing I've been mispronouncing Jenny's last name in my head or putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Well, it's possible I'm mispronouncing it.
It seems unlikely. You've known her far longer.
I have, but we have not. We met once, but we didn't say each other's names out loud. I was like, so Jenny.
It's Zemenek.
How? I was just like, yeah, Jenny. I literally probably fangirled when I met her.
She's so amazing. I would totally fangirl meeting her.
She's fabulous. She actually just lives like an hour and a half north of me, which is
yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, she lives in Ohio as well.
Nice.
So I do have hopes of one day meeting her again.
Yay.
Maybe I'll ask her how to say her last name. But until then, everything's valid.
Until then, we're just guessing. I think the pronunciation is pretty clear, but like emphasis, I'm not sure. I have no idea if it's Zemenek or Zemenek or whatever. Yeah. But your guess is probably better than mine, because like even just a knowledge of last names in Ohio might put you closer to. Well, you know how like regionally there's some.
I don't know that it's particularly an Ohio name.
Well, I mean, so you say that, but like, okay, for example, here in Winnipeg, there's a massive Ukrainian population from like, there are newer Ukrainian immigrants too, but like a lot from like 50, 60 years ago. And so anyway, there's a ton of Ukrainian last names all over Winnipeg. And they're, like they're all Canadians, they're all Manitobans, but their last names are Ukrainian. And they're pronounced very specifically, I would say, in something that is somewhere between actual Ukrainian pronunciation and like Manitoba pronunciation. So that's kind of what I mean. Like it could, there might be things like regional things like that.
There's a Midwestern way to pronounce her name.
Yeah, probably. And also like, but that same sort of thing, right? Like, I don't know if there are influxes of people with names from a certain origin that would then like get you to say it a certain way, right? Like, anyway, sorry, that was my random. But like there's now
the US hardcover is coming August 2nd, and it's super pretty, and there'll actually be some really gorgeous art under the dust jacket as well. By an artist called Avondale. So that's very exciting.
Very, very exciting. So pretty. It's super awesome. I'm excited, although I'm getting, I guess not that one, but specifically the special edition, which is slightly different even from that, right?
Yeah, it's even fancier.
Even fancier. It's gonna be so pretty.
I admit that I was like, if I'm going to put out this book, I'm going to make it even prettier.
Do it. Boom.
So I kind of like, Harper Teen set the bar, and I was like, I clearly have to surpass it.
Next run.
I'm not petty or anything.
No, it's just gonna be gorgeous because
and part of it is, just showing that indie published books can be of the same caliber. That it's not an indication of anything other than who published it.
Exactly. This is an excellent point to make. As someone who spends a lot of time trying to make indie books look as pretty as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Not just my own, but yeah, excellent. Oh my goodness, my dog has sprung a leak. She's slowly releasing air. Corey's even making supper, and she's not like, oh, I should be like over there like watching the food in case anyone drops food. She's just like sitting at the gate that points towards the office, like, where is my which is very sweet.
I mean, do you feel loved?
I do. I feel very loved.
Do you wish you were a little less loved?
No, I just wish that I had an actual real world mute button sometimes, which I kind of do. Like I can just mute myself.
I can empathize with that.
But it's hard when like I want to be talking and I can't be. I mean, she was, well, whatever. It's all good. She was also distracting when I was in the living room. There's no real quiet place in this house. That's okay.
It's all right. Toddler dog. These things.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? So, but let's go back to talking about the books. Okay. I adore Ray. She's probably one of my like all-time favorite YA heroines, like maybe my favorite. She's so awesome. Can I ask you about writing a disabled main character and what went into that for you?
So Ray, in the context of the story, is born with a club foot, and so she has mobility issues. And in the first book, because she has shoes that don't fit her properly, she actually deals with essentially chronic pain through most of the book.
Right.
And it's something that she's dealt with before, and she knows how to navigate it, but it's still very much part of the experience of that book.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to deal with that. So Ray kind of came to me as she was. Like I can't remember a time when I was like, oh, I wonder if Ray's disabled. Like, no, she like my story, my characters kind of present themselves to me usually. And Ray walked in, and she was this fierce, protective older sister who just happened to have a club foot. Writing her, and she's also a person of color, and so writing her, it was exciting because I was writing a character who was like me in a way that none of my other main characters had been before. But also I was very well aware that I didn't know the first thing about having a disability or being disabled. And so, I did some research, but I also went out and hired a sensitivity reader and worked very closely with them. And they also had a mobility impairment, and so they're really able to really focus in on Ray's experience and help me to see the things that I was missing, the places where I kind of stopped mentioning it, or the places that I could kind of lean in and make it more of part of who Ray is. And so it was really amazing to work with a sensitivity reader. If you ever have the opportunity to, anyone who's watching this, like, really listen to what people say. It helped me to interrogate some of my own assumptions. And it's hard if you're working with a sensitivity reader and they're like, well, this comment is actually kind of ableist, and you're like, and I wrote that, and that means that I have something I need to think about,
Right.
And so I really feel like I grew with these stories, and that was really an unexpected, an amazing benefit for me. But it was also really, really amazing to be able to write Ray's story. I grew up with really bad representation in books
Yeah.
for young Muslim girls, right? Like every
Right.
book I opened up that had a young Muslim girl in it was like she had to throw off the yoke of her parents' oppression and the patriarchal religion that was,
Right.
whatever. And it was just absolute rubbish. Like I would read it and be like, I don't understand, like, and why does everyone think this is a good story? It's
Right.
terrible. And so I had a very, very deep commitment to never doing that to anyone else,
Right.
which is part of why, I was working with sensitivity readers.
Right.
Yeah, so it was really amazing to be able to write Ray, to write aspects of her that I knew very deeply, and it was interesting because some of the things that she deals with, the kind of microaggressions that she deals with being disabled, it was interesting to write them because they came very naturally to me. And it was like realizing that, I can take my own experience dealing with racial microaggressions, or, anti-Islamic, Islamophobic microaggressions. And I know exactly how to translate that into what that would feel like and what that would look like, for someone who has, a different identity for myself, or a different aspect of their identity. So that was really interesting to me. That came naturally.
Oh man.
Oh, no. But it was,
Bummer of a world that we live in.
but it has also been really special, and I feel very honored and privileged to been able to share Ray's story and to hear back from readers who have seen themselves very deeply in Ray, and seen a representation of themselves that they haven't had the opportunity to read before, and that has been very meaningful. And I'm really grateful to have been able to give that to certain readers.
It's awesome. And I mean, yeah, I feel like, one of the things I love about Ray is just, she's just so Ray, and she is just her own person, and she's in this story and just being true to herself, and like what more could anyone ask for representation, like regardless of what identity you're looking for, right? Like that's always the goal, right? And of course I can't, I don't have the background to like deeply analyze whether or not there's any like remnants of internalized ableism in there, et cetera. Like it seemed amazing to me, but I also wouldn't be the person to notice.
But yeah, I mean, if there's anything in there, then
I'm
I
very
really apologize for it.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems excellent, but I am very much on my own journey of dealing with my own internalized ableism. So I'm not the correct person to assess. Right. But I do love her. And she's she's just such a fully formed character. She is who she is. And I feel like that's a beautiful thing. And that you did it really well.
Thank you.
From my perspective, limited as it is.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for answering that question. That was a lovely, thoughtful answer. And I am always curious about what other authors do for these types of things, because it's, I think, something that we all need to be dealing with in examining our own biases as we write even stories from perspectives that are entirely our own. Mm-hmm. We all usually we all still have a lot of stuff to unload. And so like these interrogations are important.
Yeah.
Whether we're telling a character story that's like pretty much ours or farther afield, like the questions are still the same, like turning that lens inward and like thinking about the baggage that we bring. And but the awesome, like I loved hearing about you working with a sensitivity reader, because like what an amazing resource to be able to have someone say, well, like this actually is ableist, and then to be able to be like, oh crap. But then like have that marked and be like, okay, well now I have to process this and figure out what my deal is. And
I think that it's very easy to be defensive, be like, well, I didn't mean it like that. And it's like, nope, doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Like maybe I did.
Right.
Don't get defensive. Like maybe I really need to think about how I've internalized, because so much of racism and bigotry is taught to us socially. And so even if we don't consciously adhere to that way of thinking, we've internalized it. And so, it's this whole implicit bias. It's all, it's all there. We have the language for it now. Like, and the work of it is to interrogate ourselves.
Yeah. Continuously, right? Like I mean,
which can be tiring. So give yourself a break. but when someone calls you on it, listen.
Right. Yes, exactly. Totally. And it's so important. I mean, it's yes, I appreciate that you did that. And I also I'm continuously inspired to do more work myself, because I know that it's always necessary. Like, it's not like we ever stop. Not like we ever like, oh, great, congratulations, you graduated. You've pulled ahead of systemic racism and now you're free.
Oh my God. I wish.
Right.
I so wish.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Another kind of fantasy, and I like it, but we're not
right. What if we say, oh God, I wish that there was just like a button I could press to just like, okay, you've undone, beep, undo all the horrible, I shouldn't say brainwashing, but it is kind of like the programming. Yes, thank you. That's a better word. Just the horrible programming that we get from childhood. And, internalized misogyny, internalized racism, internalized ableism, all these things, internalized fat phobia, like so much of it. And just the constant. It's like, I really do wish I could just like dump cash, get rid of that. And like,
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we try to do as we raise our children, right?
Yes. I try so hard to start her off ahead of where I am, yeah, totally. Well, that got deep, which is not bad, because one of the other things that that Ray's story tackles head on, we already talked a little bit about, because even in Thorn, the issues of justice and where it lies and what to do in the absence of well, actually, okay, so Thorn touches on a different piece, but Ray's story very much touches on justice and the absence of perhaps what one might hope for systemic justice. The access to justice. Thank you. Yes, so limited access to justice, selective access to justice, a problem that is a very real one in our current times. And also just Ray goes head to head with human trafficking. I don't think that's a spoiler. It's pretty obvious from the opening chapter of Theft of Sunlight. So and it's even something that's touched on in Thorn, right? Like all of these issues were initially sort of raised a bit in Thorn, but then kind of get, they're not the point of Thorn, but they're very much the point of Ray's story. Which is amazing. I gotta say, like, I just freaking love the way you do this, like the way that you take these serious issues. And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, read these books because Intisar has solved these problems.
I know.
Far from it. Like,
you're not supposed to read negative reviews or even really talk about them, but one of my favorite negative reviews was like, essentially, that I asked all these questions about justice and I really didn't answer them well enough. I was like, no, that's the whole point. It's like, we have to figure these things out. Like, and it changes, and it's there's no one answered. I just wanted to hug this person.
Intisar Khanani did not solve systemic injustice by the end of this book. I want my money back.
I just felt really bad that I had made them a promise I didn't keep.
I really wanted a step-by-step guide to fixing police brutality, human trafficking, and
Ray tries to do that.
She so tries. She so tries. She really wants it too. I mean, that's the thing I love, right? Like Ray goes out there and she is 100% like, we'll get the cops to help. And then she's like, wait a minute. Shh.
The cops are gonna kill me.
The cops are gonna kill me. The cops aren't gonna help. That is not good. And so then, and then she's like, well,
does
that's
have a that
okay.
is not good moment.
She does. She's like, oh. That's one of the things I love about her story, because it's just, I feel like it's me over the last 15 years. It's like Ray story smushed into like this 2 books, and she's just like, which is like what, 6 months or a year, like,
yeah.
And it's just it's like she just very quickly goes through all the crap that I went through coming from like a childhood of like, police are here to help, to then being like, and the government will like do its best to solve these problems and like all this stuff. And then she's just like on this horrible twisty slide she can't get off of finding out how none of that is true. And it's really fast, but I'm just like, look at Ray, look at her go. This is exactly what I went through, only it took me like way longer to go through those pieces.
I figured no one wanted the epic saga of sorrow, so we were just gonna have to go fast.
Boom, boom, boom. But it's so well done, Intisar. I'm sorry. Like, I honestly don't know anyone else who could take the plucky, determined heroine who's just like, then like, oh no, all these things that you thought were the way that you were going to solve this problem are not actually available to you. And instead you have this, and now you have to figure out like, what version of this is acceptable to you? And I love that question. Yeah. And I kind of love the way that it's not fully answered, because how do you answer that question? Like, anyway, that like, I feel like there's not.
And Ray's decision at the end of Darkness is not necessarily the best decision she could have made, right? And I think that's part of why this is an upper YA book, is like, right, you need to be discerning enough to be like, but was that the right decision? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe right, maybe that was the best decision in the moment, but was it overall? There's a lot, and that's kind of what happens when you're failed by the system. Yes. And she's trying to essentially to break what needs to be breaking so that the system can reform, yes, in a way that's more just. Yeah. And that's some good trouble she gets up to there.
It is some good trouble. It is 100%. And that's what I just loved it. My condolences to the people who expected you to solve all the problems. But I was like, man,
if I knew those answers, I wouldn't just be writing fantasy books.
You'd be leading whole nations,
changing reality,
in charge of the UN, probably. Like what would? Yeah. This is, yeah, because like what? Oh, anyway. But I loved the way that you dealt with it, because yeah, I mean, I felt like in a fantasy world, you came up with like the most realistic, and I won't even say solution, but conclusion that you could.
I don't know. Through my characters a party, right?
I found it all very satisfying. I'll just say that. But also I just seriously like avoid like forgetting about solutions or not, tie-ups and endings. Just the whole series, what I adore about it is the questions it raises the whole time. Like, regardless of what answers the characters or the people reading the book come up with for themselves, those questions are so important, and so few books raise them in a meaningful way, right? Like, it's, I think the questions come up whether the authors mean them to or not often, right? And I read a lot of books and I'm like, okay, it's weird to me that none of the characters were worried about this, like characters who've just been like decided in either direction, right? Like either, oh yeah, it's cool, I 100% support this random monarch that is in charge of things, and like I'm gonna prop them up, or characters that are just like, no, vigilantism is 100% the only way to go to solve these problems. And either one of those, I'm always like, wait, but you're like, really, you're truly satisfied with this solution? You character are okay with this? It raises a lot of questions in me as a reader. And then when those questions aren't also raised amongst the characters, even if they address them in some way that they find suitable that I don't agree with, that's fine. But like, but so few books even like bring it up, you know, they're just like, no, of course they chose that because that's whattever was useful to the story. Like,
that's the story forward.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that it's a thing that gets brought up again and again and is a problem and needs to be addressed, and the characters try to address it and do their best with what they got.
Yeah.
I don't know. It all felt very real and well motivated, and I don't know. Yeah, and everybody was true to themselves. I liked it.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing stories like that, because we need more, and especially as YA books. And thank you. Can I put in the teeny tiny spoiler that you might guess, because I have thanked you before for this publicly on Twitter?
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Okay, it's about reproductive rights, essentially. Can I?
If you don't
vague
name
terms,
names,
won't name names. No.
Yeah.
But I would like to thank you for including the only ever mention of even a magical vasectomy in a young adult novel or an adult novel.
If you have magic, what is the point if you can't do a little snip?
Right? It seems legit to me.
But yeah, it was one of these things where I find that we tend to put the question of birth control always on the woman. And it's important not only to have these discussions and be open about them. And it's an awkward conversation in this book because which is
so realistic. Yes, thank you.
Yes, it's like you are going to stumble, you're going to say the wrong thing, you're going to embarrass yourself, but you still need to have this conversation. And it's important for the guys to realize they have a part in this as well and to be responsible.
And I loved everything about it, which there's no other way for me to talk about it without spoilers, but it was done so well. I literally cheered. I put the book down and went, yeah. And it was like 2:00 in the morning. And then I was like, oh shit, too loud. That was absolutely a highlight for me. And I wanted to give you a high five through the internet. I will give you a high five when I see you in August.
Yes.
I'm going to be like, Intisar, high five. And you'll be like, what, why? And I'm going to give it to you and then be like, magical vasectomy. That was a magical vasectomy high five. But seriously, not so. First of all, I'm extra excited because it happened in a YA book, because even the YA books that have gotten good about talking about sex in a way that's like where it's like more consensual and those types of topics are still brought up. But yeah, even still, we usually just hear about a magical form of birth control that again is completely on the woman to participate in. And you know, like there's a certain amount of realism to that because there aren't that many guys jumping up and volunteering for vasectomies, but
you could still talk about it.
And it could still be a theoretical option in your world, depending on your world building. Like I loved that so much. And the way it was brought up and the way it was like, it was a magical moment for me. And even in adult fantasy, where I feel like it should come up even more often, because like adults should be more equipped to discuss these things, even though
also know, like one of the characters says, you know, so 9 months from now, if we thought about that, like,
right.
Adults know about the 9 months. Like
That's
kids
right.
might forget if they get, excited.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just fabulous, and it's something that I would like to see way more of in more fantasy. So anyway, thank you again. While I'm thanking you for things.
It was delightfully hilarious to write.
It's such a cute scene. I like that whole scene. Okay, so honestly, we've covered the questions. I've trapped you here for an hour and a half, which is usually the time I try to start wrapping myself up. Because let's be honest, it's usually me that's talking too much. But so I think we're gonna go with my classic final question.
Okay.
Wait, but I did want to ask about more stories. Okay, before I go to the final question, the pre-final question will be about back to books. So A Darkness at the Door is out right now in ebook everywhere. It's out in hardcover in the UK. It is
it's paperback in the UK.
Oh, it's out in paperback in the UK. The hardcover in the US is coming out August 2nd. So everyone should go order the heck out of it. If you haven't read Thorn and Theft of Sunlight, you should also order the heck out of those. The only thing you're required to read before reading A Darkness at the Door is Theft of Sunlight. If you want to read Thorn also, though, it's fabulous and you should, and you'll get even more out of the other stories if you do. Meanwhile, what is happening next? You have some other releases there's like
I have the Alchemy of Sorrow coming up.
Yes.
Beyond that, I am working on the next Sunbolt book.
Yay.
Because that poor series has been waiting a while.
Aww.
This was another draft that gave me a lot of trouble. So I've
Is
done
there romance?
I've done the shingles, I've done the repetitive stress injury. The question is, what's next?
Nothing. Just chill.
I didn't see shingles coming, so I'm really curious. really curious what's gonna happen.
Get a walking desk now.
Sorry.
Get a walking desk now and prevent the inevitable neck injury or back injury or something.
You know what? You're probably right. I'm probably gonna get like a slipped vertebra or something. I better a herniated disc. I need to
book massage
to fix that before
preemptively.
So why do you have this? The herniated disc I'm gonna get next month. Okay.
Sorry, continue. Please tell us about the Sunbolt series.
Yeah, so Sunbolt Chronicles is a younger YA. It's a lot of fun.
With
sorrow and sadness along the way. I was like, it's fun. And then I was like, honestly, it seems to be I'm the only one who finds this like a highly amusing series. So this isn't a spoiler, but the very first scene and the very first chapter, Hitomi, who's my main character, she's biracial. If she lived in our world, she would be Japanese Arab. She's walking through a market and someone offers to tell her her future. And she kind of jokes around about it, but then she allows it, and her future is to run and keep running. And that is literally the summary of the whole series. Like, I thought it was hilarious that I was like, here's what the books are about. But no one has ever mentioned that this is particularly fun. I don't know why.
I haven't read Sunbolt yet, so I have to now, like, now you've already spoiled the joke, so I can't.
Yeah. Well, there's a few more in there. So Sunbolt is a story about a young woman who has a dangerous sense of honor, and she volunteers to help a noble family escape execution, and she ends up getting caught by the dark mage who killed her father. And so it's one of these out of the frying pan into the fire kind of stories. It's a lot of fun. It's very fast paced. And then book 2 is Memories Vash. And I can't really describe it without giving away spoilers for Sunbolt. So
don't do that.
I hope to see it. So I'm working on book 3 now. I wrote the draft 6 years ago. It has been haunting me.
Oh no.
And glaring at me and being impossible. I have nicknamed it the Impossible Draft, but I actually got a writing coach at one point, and she helped me figure out what I needed to do.
Wait a minute. When you say got a writing coach, is this the very famous writing coach that you have?
The
mentor, or is this someone else?
No, this is someone else. This was a class I took, and by a legit trained
coach.
She's a coach. Yeah, and she's like, we sat down for my session, and I was like, I don't know what to do, and she was like, well, Intisar, I think you're making it overly complicated.
No.
Would I ever do such a thing?
Never.
No. But she helped me kind of scale back both my anxiety and what I was trying to, how I was approaching the book. Yes. Not what I'm trying to do, but how I'm approaching what I want to do.
Gotcha.
And I think that's going to be very successful. So,
yay! That sounds awesome.
Very excited.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yay!
Sorry, very long answer.
Huh?
Very long answer to a short question.
Well, that's fine. Well, there's no actual time limit. I was just trying to get myself to stop talking. But I'm actually super interested in the Sunbolt series because I haven't started reading it yet, mainly because I know that as soon as I start reading it, I'm going to fly through books 1 and 2. And so
and then you start bugging me for book 3, and you'll be doing a whole lot of readers a favor.
Okay, well, that's fair. And I guess I do actually have normally I don't do that to myself. I buy the books anyway. I'm not one of the people who's like, I'm going to wait till the series is done so I can buy it. I buy them up front, and then I'm like, but I might wait to read them until the next book is out. Yeah. But in this case, I do happen to have access to the author and might be able to to poke the author and or help troubleshoot.
There you go. I'm going to need beta readers, Virginia.
Oh, but I would annoy the heck out of you if I just read the first 2 books and then started asking you random questions that weren't actually part of a beta read. Just Intisar, what about this? What about this? What about this? You'd be like, Virginia, shut up, I'm writing. No, answer my questions. I won't do that, I promise.
That's just incentive for me to work faster. See, so I get it done before you read the books.
Oh, there you go. Well, you don't have a very long window because I'm about to go on vacation, and guess what's at the top of my TBR?
Well, I will put this out there that I initially wrote Sunbolt for myself, and so one of the things I did is I put in a whole bunch of YA tropes that drive me bananas, and I wrote them like I was serious about them, with the specific plan to turn them all on their heads or ignore them. Or break them over the course of the series. So if you're like, why does this character have purple eyes? It's because, why do characters have purple eyes? Are you serious? There's something wrong with them.
Very well. That does. I'm excited. I'm actually really looking forward to it. You have mentioned that particular trope and then a few others a few times that I'm very excited to see you turn on its head. So but I'm always happy to read any of your writing. I'm apparently done talking, but I haven't stopped yet. That's a problem. So
that's why we shouldn't put writers on TV or on screens, because we keep wording. We just keep wording. Yeah.
And we don't have an edit button while we're talking live. So yeah, I'm really excited. Also, I should point out, I am excited very much so for the release of The Alchemy of Sorrow. I want everyone to read Twice Domesticated Dragons, which is the story that Intisar wrote, and it's fantastic. I love it so much. Yeah. So everyone should check that out as well. It's feels a little bit weird because it's also promoting my own work, but it's but
everyone should check it out because also your story is amazing. It's called The Thief.
Thanks.
And really just the whole
it's so many
collection of stories is very hard hitting. I don't think it's the kind of anthology you can read in one go. But
I definitely spread it out.
Right.
I spent months between stories.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some, I mean, I think it's worth saying that the anthology comes with a page of content warnings at the beginning, so you
Yes.
can know if there's a story that you need to skip.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible collection of stories.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, so it's table of contents and then the content warnings. So for people who don't want content warnings, it's very easy to skip, but for people who need them and want them, they're right there and before you get started. And and definitely worth looking at if you have things that you need to be wary of. Because it's a lot of hard-hitting stories for sure. Okay, so working on Sunbolt is next. That's awesome. There's at least one short getting released to Kickstarter backers that's related to the Dauntless Path books.
Yep.
And are there
All about
more?
me.
Are there more stories in that world coming? Even like long term.
Yeah, definitely. I want to write a story about a book for. Actually, I want to do a book for each of Ray's sisters, but specifically for her middle sister, Nia, because we see her at the end of Darkness and she has a bigger role to play. And she heads off on her own adventure. And I'm sorry, but there's no way I'm passing up writing that adventure. So.
Yay, because I'm so excited about it on so many levels, but I can't talk about it because spoilers.
Because spoilers, right?
But it's going to be so cool.
It is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And there is a character who disappears in the Theft of Sunlight whom we don't hear from again. And I actually have part of a book drafted for her. So I will hopefully come back to that. It will probably change completely from where it was. Hi, Cedar. But yeah, I have both of those. And I actually also have another book that is unrelated to Dauntless Path that I very much want to write, which is a gender swapped Sleeping Beauty story. It's a dystopian post-apocalyptic US in which a young woman accidentally wakes up a Djinn Lord who was put in cryogenic sleep for very good reasons. And so it's kind of like it starts at the end of Sleeping Beauty, but then it pulls back threads from the story and revisions them. And yes, I'm very excited about that one.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Yeah. I'm excited for it too now. Okay, well, there you have it, folks. There's lots of awesome stuff coming from Intisar Khanani in the next little while. And my daughter is strumming ukulele.
Musical accompaniment.
While we wrap this up. So my very final question, and it should be a short one, is just if you could have any fantasy animal companion, what would you choose and why? And would it be a ukulele that plays itself?
My husband has a ukulele that he also plays. So I think that
that's covered.
That's covered. Yeah, we're good. We're good on that. He's very good too. Yeah, it's nice.
Sweet.
Because it could also be not nice, but thankfully it's nice.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think you have a lovely accompaniment too. But let's see, a magical animal companion. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I kind of almost want to say a luck dragon.
Oh, that's a good choice. Falcor. Yeah.
I mean, they do take up a bit of space. So like if they came in like a travel size, also that would be good. A little mini right on my shoulder. But then I mean, also you don't have to, like, transportation isn't an issue if they're full size.
Full size, that's true. Yeah. And there's like they could hang on the roof.
And like green energy, like they're totally eco-friendly and
true.
Great fertilizer for the backyard.
Totally. Amazing. Best compost ever. And it's a luck dragon. So like, can you imagine how well things would grow? Right? Although it begs the question, does a luck dragon process bad luck and push it out and retain the luck inside?
Tell you what, I might be donating my compost.
I don't know. That feels like something you would have to answer if you were if you were gonna deal with that.
Anyway, I'll check with my luck dragon before I bring him home.
Good idea. Always double check with your luck dragon before using their waste for compost. Okay. And on that note, everyone. What do fantasy authors do in their free time? Precisely this. They ask the really important, hard-hitting questions.
We do. We talk about justice.
Yep.
Birth control.
Yep.
And luck dragon
Feces. Whether or not it's lucky.
Output.
Yeah. Luck dragon output. Love it. Love it. All right. On that note, everyone, we wish you a good night. Thank you so much, Intisar, for your time. I always enjoy talking to you. This was an extra delightful conversation for so many reasons.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who came to watch Misty 306 and Anita Stewart and anyone else who was watching. We did get up to 8 concurrent viewers at some point. So yeah, massive numbers. I really need to remember to promote things before 5 minutes before we start. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone who came to watch. And thank you so much, Intisar. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. I will be hitting the end live stream buttons right now. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Intisar.
Bye.
But